Welcome to Facts About Everything. I'm your host, James Egan. Today we'll be looking at the 27th President, William Howard Taft. Taft was hand-picked by Roosevelt to be his successor. Taft built the Oval Office. Taft is the fattest president in American history, weighing 330 pounds. His nicknames were Big Bill and Big Lub. There is a fact circulating the internet that Taft was so big that he once got stuck in his bathtub. This never happened. His bathtub was so big he could easily have fitted 4 people. Some sources say he built the bath that big because he got stuck in his previous bath, but there's no reliable source to confirm this. Taft's dog was called Caruso. He once said, "Failure to accord credit to anyone for what they may have done is a great weakness in any man." He suffered from obstructive sleep apnea. His apnea was so bad he would fall asleep in meetings. He even fell asleep at his presidential briefing sessions. He was the first president to throw the first ball of baseball season. This is a tradition that continues to this day. His cows were called Mully Wooly and Pauline Wayne. He was the last president to keep a cow at the White House. He called the White House the loneliest place in the world. You're wrong, man. That's my last birthday party. While he was visiting Yosemite National Park in 1909, his horse stopped due to exhaustion of carrying the rotund president. Thus, Taft got off and had to drag the horse along. He was so tone-deaf he had to be nudged when the national anthem was being played because he just couldn't hear the tune. He was the first president to own a car. He converted the stables of the White House into a garage. He is the only president to serve as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Taft believed his greatest accomplishment was being the Chief Justice. Toy manufacturers were worried that the market for teddy bears would fade when Teddy Roosevelt's presidency ended, so they created Billy Possums to commemorate President Taft. Did they sell well? Have you ever heard of them? No. He suffered the worst defeat by another president. He only received 8 electoral votes. At Yale, he was a member of the secret society Skull and Bones. The Skull and Bones Society was co-founded by Taft's father. Speaking of skulls, Taft had his skull fractured at 9 years old when he fell off a wagon. It left a visible deep dent on his head for the rest of his life. He was an excellent wrestler while he was at Yale. He was the last president to have facial hair. He is the only president to swear in another president. He swore in Calvin Coolidge in 1925 and Herbert Hoover in 1929. After his presidency ended, he lost 80 pounds. He suffered horrific hallucinations in the last year of his life. He died from cardiovascular disease. He was the first president to have his funeral broadcast on the radio. He is buried in Arlington National Cemetery, the same cemetery that JFK is buried in. His final words are unknown. The 28th President of the United States was Woodrow Wilson. If you're like me, the first time I ever heard of Woodrow was from The Simpsons. Woodrow was of Scottish-Irish descent. He had a ram called Old Ike, a cat called Puffins, and a greyhound called Mountain Boy. Although he couldn't read until he was 10 and suffered from dyslexia, he graduated from Princeton and went on to teach there. He was voted the most popular professor for 6 consecutive years at Princeton. In 1902, he became the president of Princeton. He once said, "You are not here merely to make a living. You are here in order to enable the world to live more amply, with greater vision, with a fine spirit of hope and achievement. You are here to enrich the world, and you impoverish yourself if you forget the errand." You can really tell that he was a teacher. He was the governor of New Jersey in 1910. He was nicknamed the schoolmaster of politics. He became the first president with a PhD. He had a PhD in political science. His father was one of the founders of the Southern Presbyterian Church. Woodrow's face was on the $100,000 bill. It existed between December 18th, 1934 and January 9th, 1935. That's less than a month. Why bother? He led America into World War I on April 6th, 1917. He drafted the peace plan to end World War I. Ceasefire occurred at 11 p.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918, ending the war. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1920. Because of World War I, Woodrow had to travel a lot. He spent less time in America than any other president. Woodrow passed the 19th Amendment, allowing women the right to vote. Yeah. During World War I, Woodrow bought a flock of sheep for the White House lawn. The sheep would trim the grass, therefore saving on labor. He even used the wool from the sheep to earn money for the Red Cross. He was the first president to hold regular news briefings. Woodrow suffered a stroke during his presidency, which left him partially paralyzed and nearly blind. He was so ill he was bedbound for 4 months. His wife helped him by becoming his political assistant and was known as the Presidentress. She oversaw meetings, met with governors, congressmen, senators, the press, and was in charge of the White House's internal affairs. Woodrow put forward the idea of a League of Nations, which eventually became the United Nations, to prevent any future world wars. Woodrow died due to heart complications. The The last thing he said was Edith. It was his wife's name. Let's look at the 29th President of the United States, Warren G. Harding. His middle name was Gamaliel. Gamaliel? If I say Gamaliel, it sounds like some kind of oil. If I say Gamaliel, it sounds like some character from Lord of the Rings. He was the editor for his school's newspaper when he was a teenager. He revolutionized political campaigning. It was the first time that newsreels and photo ops became the norm in a presidential campaign. Harding was a much better campaigner than he was a president. He was excellent at depicting himself the way he wanted to be seen using clever marketing. He had his podium in his home in Ohio to depict himself as a front porch president. When he became president, it was the first time the results were heard on the radio. He was the first president to visit Alaska. He was passionately against segregation. He famously said, "Let the black man vote when he is fit to vote, prohibit the white man voting when he is unfit to vote." His nickname was Winnie. He was the son of 2 doctors. He won the largest landslide in American history, taking 60% of the popular vote. Before he was president, he was a successful newspaper publisher. He bought the Mario Star newspaper in 1884 for $300. Harding loved playing poker so much with his cabinet that they were known as the Poker Cabinet. At poker parties, they would all drink and bet with alcohol, even though it was during the time of Prohibition, where it was illegal to sell alcohol. One time, Harding bet a set of priceless White House china in a game of poker. He lost. He was heavily against the League of Nations, despite the fact it was the first international organization whose main goal was world peace. He is considered to be one of the worst American presidents. He was seen as unprofessional and unethical. Even his advisors were charged with defrauding government. His dog, Laddie-Boy, had his own chair at cabinet meetings. He used to collect and deliver the presidential newspaper. He was the first person to have a golf course named after him. He died from a hemorrhage as his wife was reading an article to him called "A Calm Review of a Calm Man." Do they get sued for false advertising? His wife didn't allow an autopsy after he died. This has led to some speculation that she was somehow responsible for his death. It didn't help that she burned all of his private papers immediately after he died. Why is there so many stories in movies about JFK's conspiracy? Why not this? That sounds really suspicious. He died 2.5 years into his term. He is the shortest serving president of the 20th century. His final words were, "That's good, read some more." His father died 5 years after Harding. This is the first time a president's father outlived his son. Special thanks to these fine people for all their help. Be sure to subscribe to Facts About Everything. Follow me on Twitter for updates on upcoming videos. Check out my Facebook page to let me know what subjects you want me to look at in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again.